the self interacts within itself through these wheels of vibrations. And that's what, in a nutshell, the theory of Spanda, the doctrine of Spanda. It's self-interacting dynamics within awareness, where these four wheels interact with pure awareness as an expression of awareness itself. Period. You see, so what's the connection? I mean, Jesus, right? And Kashmir. There's a great connection between Jesus and Kashmir. BBC even made a movie about it like 30 years ago. It's archives. Not 30, 50 years ago. It's still narrated in that very traditional kind of a BBC One accent, that British accent that is no longer there in terms of the diction, and that touch of an old-fashioned cadence. So check it out, folks. Jesus and Kashmir, all the evidence, and this is before conspiracy theories, before, no, just that, evidence-based, that even the actual place of rest for both Jesus and his mother is in Kashmir. And there are people, the tradition, they are venerated there, known that they were apparently this extraordinary being who came to this area with his mother, and there is a grave at, what do you call it, a tomb, right? Or what do you call it? Not a tomb, a burial ground. Isa and Miriam. I'm not going to go into the story, it's fun. BBC did a great job. And of course, once you watch that, then the YouTube algorithm will throw you plenty of things to follow up with. So there is a connection. There is a connection. One of the principal connections, aside from potential possible historical connection, that it is possible that Jesus, as a historical character, have studied in Kashmir. Why? Simple facts. Kashmir at the time was considered to be Sorbonne of the spiritual learning. And people flocked to Kashmir from all over the world, both from Occident and from the Orient. It was very well known, all traveling through the well-established Silk Route, well-established, well-protected trade route, which had at this end the protectorate of the, let's say, the powers at the time, in the middle, perhaps by whoever there was in charge on the Central Asia, and at the far end by the Chinese authorities, because everyone was interested in making sure that this trade delivers. It was enriching and cross-pollinating the cultures. So we know that many scholars and spiritual teachings have traveled far and wide only because of the possibility of the Silk Route. Buddhism originated in India, but it didn't come to China hopping through the mountains. It came to China through Central Asia, following the pathways of the Silk Route. That's the way that Buddhism was disseminated throughout the whole entire East. So there is a great chance that Jesus, although born and raised in a small place of Bethlehem and Sea of Galilee, as which you spoke yesterday, to be just like a little lake, right? Traveled with the merchants, traveled with the convoy to go and spend some time. That's the argument. And that upon the persecution survived the crucifixion, which, as we know, was a routine punishment. There's nothing of the kind that is portrayed by the kind of the generally accepted story. There's no evidence at all of any sticks, metal things used. Crucifixion was simply a T-shape, tying people there to die from dehydration. You know all that, no? You know, there's not single evidence found that nobody else was ever crucified there. Why would Christ be crucified? Why would Christ be given such privileged treatment? What, he was important in the eyes of the, not even Romans, satrapy. It was just a province, just as you said. Imagine how it might have been. It's just like a provincial town, some mess here, whatever, you know, there is a mob like in every place and cast the guy down. Okay, so what, they're going to give him this Golgotha treatment to crucify him, so that, you know. No, he was tied among the bandits and the thieves and the outcast, you know. And probably those who loved and took pity on him, you know, took him down at night. So he survived the crucifixion. And he realized the best way to go will be to go to Kashmir. The weather is good, food is great, you know. Mary Magdalene took off the boat with Matthew, and that's how it came to the West, the shores of the Western Europe. That's the story, that's the connection. But the greatest connection is through the teaching of the heart. So we might touch upon that, not in this discourse, but there is this dimension of Hridayam, and it's very important in Kashmir Shaivism. In fact, the heart is spoken in, if we are to write, and capitalized in transliteration as that dimension of beyond all dimensions, the heart here. So the heart is the both the place of origin and of all where everything is getting reabsorbed into. There is these two fascinating dimensions, how interchangeably it even used, the heart and the womb. The heart and the womb. So we will inevitably come to this at some of the discourses, but I'd like us to go back, whilst it's fresh, to what we have sketched out there, as we have been speaking about the wheels of Shakti, or five-fold nature of awareness. Five-fold nature of awareness. This is how awareness expressing itself and manifesting itself in this body. And when we say in this body, in the world, it's equals. This is how awareness expresses itself. So each of these five wheels, chakras, I'm deliberately not using that term, so not to jump into some associative kind of ways of how the word chakra is used in modern day spirituality, as it has been adopted into the body of the New Age, primarily through the, one particular text, Shat Chakra Nirupana. That's the particular text that influenced every diagram that you come across in most of the books today you find on this, unless they're more specific. And this is where I welcome all of you to have this opportunity to reevaluate and have another fresh angle at this whole system of chakras when we speak about it in terms of our internal anatomy, let's say, and with regard to how that in turn is a reflection of the entirety of manifestation. So each of these wheel are pulsating rings, pulsating circles. That's why example was given, pebble dropped into a pond creates these circles that go out to the outer periphery, touch the shore, and then hurry back to propel by that laws, by this laws of the indestructibility of energy. So, by the first law of thermodynamics, basically, that's what it is. So this fluctuation, in a way, can also be spoken in that same way. This fluctuation, this contraction, and this expansion, it's not just haphazard, chaotic, or cannot be systematized. In fact, it's very, very structured. And that's what makes it fascinating and worthy of investigation, worthy of understanding and hearing. Because each of these 5 circles represent a specific stage in consciousness, specific stage in awareness. And understanding that gives this, I would dare say, an integral understanding of the processes of what the human body is, what the awakening is, what the whole process of Kundalini, expansion of prana, expansion of consciousness, all this what otherwise is taken often in fragments. Give this again 2 views, 2 perspectives. We'll give this a so-called, let's say, frontal perspective, where the way of the language is fitting to speak of it as descent versus ascent, right? So we will give that view. And we also give the view, as it were, the aerial view, where it will be more fitting to speak in terms of expansion and contraction, simply in terms of its graphics, simply in terms of its pictorial representation. And this will then be, in addition, accompanied by some of the propositions that are, well, I can't say my own, because that's also kind of a bit of a stretch, but I haven't encountered it anywhere, let's put it this way. So maybe it's some kind of inspiration, synthesis, and so there's no need to copyright it just yet. I think that will give us also a broader, wider, and more, I would say, all-encompassing view, which otherwise I feel too two-dimensional when we come across this human figure, chakras, that rainbow body, I meant, and then we imagine how Kundalini rises, right, and all the chakras and all. It's kind of like I always had that nagging feeling that, is it like that? Why is it experienced differently? So, back to the 5-fold nature of awareness. 5-fold nature of awareness. So we'll start with this, again, with this concentric view of that, what Spanda operates here. So the first wheel, as we have spoken about, right, the wheel of Vameshvari. The wheel of Vameshvari. The second wheel is the wheel of Kekari, the wheel of Kekari. The third wheel is the wheel of Gokari. The fourth wheel is the wheel of Dikari. And finally, the all-encompassing wheel, the fifth wheel, is the wheel of Bhukari. Bhukari. See what we have here? Can everyone see? will of Vameshvari, will of Kikari, will of Gokhari, will of Dikari, and will of Bukhari. Okay, let's deal now with what each of them represent and revisit what we spoke yesterday. So the will of Vameshvari is the one which spoken of as supreme, because this is awareness in its unmanifest state. This is consciousness in its compact mass. Awareness here is undifferentiated. In other words, nothing can be spoken about it, really, because even the sense of subjectivity is not present there. That sense of subjectivity rises in the pulsating power of the will of Kekari. So let's say Vameshvari here, it's that what represents the unmanifest state. You can just say pure awareness, okay? Then Kekari. Kekari is a move towards subjectivity. So this is the propensity within awareness towards subjective experience, towards subjectivity, but it cannot have experience yet. So you will see why. So it's, let's say, we can call it so unmanifest, pure awareness. Okay, pure awareness. Kekari, birth of subjectivity. Birthing of subjectivity. Yeah? Birthing of subjectivity. Which in turn, let's put comma here or in brackets if you want, gives rise to what we then speak of ego. Okay? It is this principle, and this is very important. If you will understand this, you will solve the riddle of the Sphinx, as they say. Riddle of the Sphinx, we will get back to this to deal with it really, really attentively. Okay? We'll get back to this so that the principle of where is the subjectivity, which is universal quality, and where is the sense of ego, so that we can have a clear understanding in terms of how it is at least viewed from this point, from the vintage point of this, let's say, philosophical system. So then comes the third chakra, the third pulsating ring, the ring of Gokhari. Gokhari. This is the formation of inner organs. See? Formation of inner organs. That's what I keep referring to as templates of creation. These inner organs. This is nothing new. In this way of speaking about it, Kashmir Shaivism simply incorporated everything that Indian philosophy dealt with already for millennia prior to that. So this whole structure, the whole concept of tattvas. So our organs don't just here haphazardly created like lamp, you know. No, at each organ of perception that our body is has its inner organ at a much more refined level of awareness, at a much more refined stage of consciousness. Is that clear? It has to be clear. Please ask if this is not clear. So the body, as we speak of it, could also be spoken of in terms of organs of cognition. Like when we think of the body, it's actually the entirety of the organs of cognition. Look at the skin. From toe to the top of my head, it's skin. And I can experience sense of touch at any point, at any place where that skin is, because that's the connection here, because skin is the largest organ. We'll go there if you want separately as a crash course to, let's say, all these, how the organs of cognition and perception are connected, and how each of the respective psychic center carries that information so that it expresses itself at the level of actual cognition. So skin is an organ. Eyes are organs. Our nose is an organ. Our tongue is an organ. That's where we taste, right? Our ears, the audible apparatus of how we hear, is an organ. So the body is also can be spoken of in terms of as the mechanics of the organs of cognition. But the inner organs are formed at the subtler, much, much subtler level of awareness. See? So after Gokari comes the fourth wheel, the wheel of Dikari. And the wheel of Dikari is the sphere of the formation of the sense perception. Sphere that belongs to the senses. You see? Sense perception. So it's formation of sense perception. Formation of sense perception. Finally, everything is culminated at the outmost wheel of energy, wheel of Shakti, that of Bhu. Kari, Bhu, from the root of the Sanskrit term earth. Bhu. Bhumi is the goddess of earth, deity of earth. Bhukari is where all that, what is now here, information, what is formed, is now requires the finale for the experience to take place. So the Bhukari is the sphere of objective experience, where these two levels prior to that, Gokari and Dikari, the formation of inner organs and formation of sense perception, in other words, formation of these templates, now can play and interact at the level of objective experience, and that level of objective experience is the level of perception. This is where perception takes place. Is that clear? So, sphere of objective experience. Sphere of objective experience. This is physical world, the world of forms and phenomena. This is where this outmost pulsating waves of consciousness, as it were, gives the possibility for that what formed here, following this progressive emission, going back to when we talked about it, right, in that vertical dimension, as it cascading down. You see, we can speak about it as cascading down, right? It's cascading down, cascading down, cascading, and each time it cascading, it creates, you know? Do you see? Do you see what we're speaking about? And here we speak about it as pulsating. It's simply easier for an eye to grasp this. It gives us, it's just a helpful assistance to integrate this understanding even through the visual sense. Some of us are more visual, others have, maybe more audio preferences, but what I wanted to point out your attention is that Vamishvari is the domain of pure awareness, and that's, remember yesterday we spoke about where the affair settled in the first place, where awareness conceals itself by the power of its own limitation. And there's this term in Sanskrit, in Kashmir Shaivism, which is unique to Kashmir Shaivism, kanchukas. These kanchukas are at the level of Vamishvari. This is already where awareness creates the greatest imposition upon itself. And that is not to be understood as some kind of like, it happened here, and now we move to another. This is why the helpful example is as waves, you see? So these kanchukas, right? This self-limitation takes place right at the border of breaking into, as it becomes another wave, where the possibility for subjective experience is now given a chance to rise. Do you understand that? So without that, there is no possibility for subjective experience. It's pure homogeneous awareness. Pure homogeneous awareness. There's nothing in that awareness. Everything is, we can't even say in a state of pure potentiality, because that's further down in the descending order. It's the homogeneous mass of consciousness. It's pure awareness. It's undifferentiated, unmanifest. It contains in itself everything as plenitude. You see? The modality of where we started our discourse, modality, right, is not even born yet. This modality, right, Shiva Shakti Nara, is not yet there for the experience to take place. So the will of Vamishvari, in a way, we can speak about it in a way that the whole entire manifestation is this interaction between the pure awareness and the four progressive wheels of energy emanating from it and being reabsorbed back into it, emanating out of it and being reabsorbed back into it. See? So this happens at the infinitesimal level with the velocity which cannot be measured, because it's not even the speed of light. It's unimaginable. There is no mathematical equation to measure it, because at this stage of the move, there is no space-time unrolled yet. So why this new concept of the universe, which replaced the theory of Big Bang, is the cutting edge. They call it differently. They call it freezing universe. Forever, kind of like this. It's not that the universe came out of the big explosion, because there was this Big Bang theory, I'm sure all of you remember, and it kind of was like a big novelty, and yeah, that's probable. Everything in a vacuum state, completely, also compacted, and then under whatever, we don't know what kind of energy propelled for that what was completely and utterly compacted into that nothingness of not even any category that we can speak of, because it's not a black hole, because black hole is a process, is a whole process of the life of the star. It's just pure vacuum state of nothingness. And then suddenly, under tremendous force within, it burst forth. And that's the theory of Big Bang in a nutshell, which was suggested after there was this detection of the background radiation, which was found in every part of testable universe, as it were. That anywhere outside of our solar system, there's this background radiation, this background noise. And so the suggestions were given that this background radiation is a result of that Big Bang. Just after the explosion, let's say, on a mini scale, people did give these analogies, by the way, after the detonation of the first atomic bomb, before it was used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. When the first test was carried out, these exact analogies were given later when the Big Bang theory came, because the Big Bang came later. You know that, right? Big Bang is I don't know what exact date, I cannot give you, but I think the theory of the Big Bang was proposed sometimes circa late 50s, something like that, before my birth. But when I grew up, it was very, very in vogue. Very, very much kind of like, there was this almost euphoria that we finally solved the origin of the universe. But it didn't last for too long because it began to pose problems. I'm not knowledgeable enough to speak about it, what kind of problems, but instead it was replaced, particularly with the rise of the superstring theory, that the universe actually, because before that, let's just maybe complete that sentence. Before that, it believed that based on that understanding of that the theory of Big Bang deals with, universe began from somewhere. You see, from somewhere, it's a limitation of the language because it was nowhere, because the space-time did not exist. Space-time unrolled, you see, literally unraveled as a result of the Big Bang. So it's like they graphically even, I've seen this back in the Soviet Union. It was done in this primitive computer graphics. Boof, it's just like, and the universe expands and suddenly like first all in a gaseous state of pure radiation, in like radiation of unimaginable degree. The heat of unimaginable degree. It's like, unimaginable. And unimmeasurable as well. This has nothing to do with the temperature of the sun. And this is the temperature that comes out of the Big Bang. You know that, folks, that even the first atomic test, right, showed that at the moment of once the actual atomic explosion takes place, the temperature, the heat released is higher than on the surface of the sun. Higher. So this just shows you it goes beyond the physics already there and then. So the Big Bang theory, and of course it's like this expansion gives rise to space, and space gives rise to time, and they are inseparable from their own space-time domain. This is the most, like the area that did not leave Einstein till the rest of his days. He wanted to solve that, you see? And so this gives birth to all the galaxies, star systems, clusters of stars, and what have you, and eventually, as it expands, it cools off, you see? It cools off. I even remember as a kid our position of a solar system given. So we live somewhere in the periphery. It's a kind of like was adjustment to our sense of whatever. Apparently we are in the periphery even twice. We're like real peripheral guys. First of all, we are on the periphery of that expansion, and we are on the periphery of the galaxy as well. We are not even where things are happening. We're not like anywhere like, where things are real, kind of, So just somewhere like really on the outskirts of the galaxy and then the solar system, teeny little star, sun, and us here. So this was kind of like all fascinating, and this was the era of that, the space, vastness of space. Bottom line is, according to that theory of Big Bang, universe will expand until that velocity of the power released from the Big Bang will reach its limit, because it cannot expand further anymore. And following these laws of physics, it will begin to contract. So this is interesting, whether it makes sense to us or not, but that's how the cosmology was explaining this whole Big Bang. So the Big Bang is an event in time. It's incomprehensible in terms of what we think of time, one way or another. Then after this furthermost outwardmost expansion is completed, it will then be a process of contraction. And then everything will be annihilated, because that's what it would mean. Because all the star galaxies, all these distant universes, all this will come closer, until it will all go back into the vacuum state. So that's a Big Bang for you, in a nutshell. But then another theories came, and one of them is that universe was never actually came as a result of the Big Bang. And this is the most fascinating, because that's almost one-on-one with how it is understood and spoken about in Kashmir Shaivism. Instead, universe is literally the result of a tremendous speed of that what comes in waves and reabsorbed. And in other words, everything that we experience is like a frame, a particular frame in a movie. The old-fashioned, not digital, but the movies that were in that tape, right? Frame, individual frame. So in other words, universe comes and goes out of existence, comes and goes out of existence, again, incomprehensibly fast. Incomprehensibly fast. This is the most fascinating, I don't know if it's the latest in the science, but when it came around, a lot of analogies were immediately made. This is where also the works of someone like Mark Dutchkovsky, when unimaginably, like, he wrote this book in his, like, I don't know, in his young years. I think he was barely in his 30s. Barely. The Doctrine of Vibration, where he translated the Spandakarikas and the existing glossary on that, and gave most lucid exposition on the theory of vibration. All that at the very same time when these scientific propositions were made, somewhat 30, maybe 40 years ago. This is also coincided with one particular famous Indian teacher, guru at the time, Swami Muktananda, who also was compelled to shift from teaching, let's say, from the position of that more classical Vedantic and Advaitic perspectives, when he discovered Kashmir Shaivism and completely reevaluated his curriculum, and that's what he was teaching effectively. And this all neatly comes together in terms of that, the doctrine of vibration in terms of this pulsating universe. Because according to the Shaivite philosophy, the concept of birth, creation, is not taking place in time, like in Manvantaric sense, where at some point comes a phase of reabsorption, when after the end of, let's say, that epoch, that kalpa, that great kalpa. Remember we talked about the life of Brahma equals day of Vishnu, life of Vishnu equals day of Shiva, and lives of Shiva ends the kalpa. And this is then comes pralaya. In other words, pralaya, it's the end of the world. The world is withdrawn. Even Vashishta Yoga speaks about that. There's a conversation when this bird Garuda enlightens Rama further on the nature of reabsorption and how he survives pralaya, how one single bird survives pralaya. It's crazy. But in Kashmir Shaivism operates instead with this understanding of the pulsating nature of awareness, where it is created, sustained, dissolved, concealed, and revealed all at once. So in other words, it's spookily close to that theory that replaced the Big Bang theory. I forgot its name in English. Let's look it up, okay, folks? Please look it up, like theory that replaced the Big Bang. Because I'm saying that's the cooling, like, yeah, because yes, it's like instead of that heat as that principle that gives rise, and then boom, again reabsorbed. Instead, universe is never created, was never created, and it has no end. Why? Because the very concept of creation and whatever, whether concentric or sequential, presupposes a kind of a form of linearity of time. Whereas this latest theory gives a quantum suggestion for the universe, that universe is that what appears and then disappears, and then appears, and then disappears, and then appears and disappears. But it does it so fast that we don't have the gap. We don't see that where each frame of that film is separated by the black into another frame. We watch the movie. And you need to have the right speed. Right? Remember the projectors? Any of you remember those projectors, right? Cinema Paradiso? Anyone? And you reach that right velocity. It has to have the right velocity, otherwise everything will be either too slow, you will see the frames, or too fast, and everyone will be moving like in those early age of cinematography. And then suddenly everyone moves like we do. So the cinema becomes a real experience. So this cinematic experience is also quite alluringly similar to this explanation of the frame per billion, what have you, per second, because it's not the unit of time here is irrelevant. We can't come up with a unit of time so fast. So this is one-on-one how it is seen in Kashmir Shaivism, where there is no such thing as created universe existing throughout some time, and then comes the time when the universe will be destroyed and dissolved. We don't live in a created universe. See? So this is the true sense of infinity. So there is no such thing as something going towards something, because if you reflect and contemplate on that, if any of us have this tendency to contemplate, whenever there is something which points out as some kind of dynamic from point A to point B, let alone from point A to point Z, if the dictionary is to be used, right? It presupposes some form of well, some form of development, isn't it? It presupposes some kind of unfoldment of the plot. No? Like from A to B, got to be some, why otherwise? Well, imagine now that there is no such thing. There's no A to B. You see? If you truly reflect on this, as I hope you do, it's pulling the rug beneath our feet in terms of our aspirations, in a sense of that, let's say, down-to-earth ways of thinking, in terms of like progression towards something. It's eternal in its essence, and it doesn't come from anywhere. It's never created, and it cannot cease to exist. You see? All there is the self-interacting dynamic between the self and the self. The self-interacts within itself through these wheels of vibrations. And that's what, in a nutshell, the theory of Spanda, the doctrine of Spanda. It's self-interacting dynamics within awareness, where these four wheels interact with pure awareness as an expression of awareness itself, period. That what is considered to be second most important doctrine in Trikashayavism, alongside of that of doctrine of recognition. And it doesn't have a goal, as you can see. The goal here is simply to tap into these concentric wheels of awareness so as to realize that fivefold nature of our own Atmas reality as it expresses itself through this neurophysiology. The sphere of pure awareness here is indeed yogically coincides with the Sahasrara or the Brahmarandra, because that's where the place of reabsorption of energy with its source taking place. So that is intact. So the wheel of Vamishvari proceeds from that Bindu Visarga, inside the head, which corresponds to the activity of the highest glands. And then we have the wheel of Kekari. So Kekari, if some of you have read maybe, Kekari, it's the mudra also, Kekari mudra, which basically moving in ether, moving in space. It's a mythical mudra, you know, anatomically, in Hatha Yoga, it's a particular, let's say, movement of the tongue to push all the way up to the palate so as to gently massage the palate to activate the release of the juices of immortality from the principal glands, and to prevent for that juice of immortality to be consumed, that lunar quality, by gastric fire. But it's not only reserved to that. So Kekari Mudra goes beyond just the physical internal posture of pushing the tongue upward, for which the yogi cut the frenum because the length of the tongue. In many cases of Kundalini unfoldment, this process is spontaneous. I went through it myself in the second year of my awakening in sadhana, where the tongue simply went up and remained there pretty much all the time, and except when eating. And so I would suggest for you to remember, so that it's easy to allocate that. So Kekari will be actually this area of where the head rests on the, so kind of corresponding in a way to the Vishuddhi chakra. But it doesn't mean it's a Vishuddhi chakra. You see? It's corresponding to that area. It's corresponding to the activity of that particular area. So Kekari, see? It's not corresponding to exact chakra of the Vishuddhi, see? So this is where it's not just like one size fits all, but there is something else to which we spoke in the Kundalini course, and we can revisit that, but let's just keep it simple. So then comes the wheel of the Gokari. And it's very easy because the wheel of Gokari neatly corresponds to the heart chakra, heart center. This is the formation of the inner organs. All our organs exist and form there. Likewise, all emotional states are in the heart chakra, in the domain of the heart chakra. See? All this is at the level of the heart. So for you to incorporate and remember that, right? Kari, right? So it's like moving in space. Gokari, it's the heart. Then comes Dikari, and that corresponds to the Kanda and all this bulb of this. This is the formation of sense perception. This is the busiest part in the spiritual anatomy because that's where the 10 most important nadis spring forth. Again, we dealt with it minutely in the Kundalini course. So hopefully when the book is out, will be easy reference there given. So Dikari, it's a bit naughty. I don't want to go there because I would rather keep this bit more kind of like, it's at the area of here. It's nothing to do with the dick. So just try to understand that it's a Sanskrit term. Dikari. So it's the area of the lower seat, the seat of the lower vital, this Kanda bulb. Okay? Finally, Bukhari. Well, earth element, yes, that's the earth element. That's indeed is the earth element. Yeah, that's the most solid morphed expression here. Bhu is easy because Bhu is the root for the term Bhumi, Devi, goddess of earth. Bhu here is the earth element. So in other words, it's the sphere of objective experience. It's the world. It's all that. So the Bukhari, of course, will correspond to the Muladhara chakra, right? This will indeed correspond to the Muladhara, to the base chakra. This is where we are experiencing this primordial connection, primordial connection to the earth as both element and the manifest plane of creation, sense of gravity. It's also that area which gives the rise for the possibility to experience sense of smell. Gandha is corresponding to the level of the earth. See? So see how interestingly how it's, although the grossest, the most viscose, the most dense and opaque, and yet it is responsible for the most elusive experience, that of scent. See? So these connections are there to be made, and in meditations this can reveal itself. The superstructure may reveal itself. See? Upon full awakening of the Muladhara chakra, these gifts can be given. See? So I just wanted to give this. You see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't have 7. See? In the classical, they are spoken of as 7. Well, actually 6, because Shat chakra nirupana is 6, not 7. Shat chakra is 6, because Sahasrara is never spoken of as a chakra. Sahasrara is not a chakra in the sense of how it is described in yogic texts. Every other psychic center, according to this yogic philosophy or yogic esoteric perspective, starting from Muladhara and culminating with Ajna, are chakras. But the Brahmarandra or Sahasrara is not a chakra. Why? Because all these psychic centers have spokes. They have what later has been reinterpreted as petals of lotus flowers. But this is esoteric language invented, created for serving as an assistance during meditative practices. See? Doesn't mean that that is how it is or how we even experience that. Instead, these are spokes. If I had that as a tool, metal spokes that are freely kind of like this, but as I start, let's say, moving this, then these spokes would start open up and they will start vibrating like a helicopter that's about to take on. And at some point, when the velocity is high enough, you will not see a single spoke. What you will see is a wheel. See? All you will see is a wheel, no? And that's why, and that's how chakras are experienced. All this mumbo-jumbo of New Age, working on chakras unless Kundalini is awakened, is an invention. Noble, but a nonsense invention. Because you can't work on chakras, because the chakras are spokes down like this. They only rise when Kundalini strikes through them. Without Kundalini going through that psychic center, there cannot be movement in the chakra. And that's what happens when Kundalini strikes through the chakra. In some cases, it's spoken of as piercing, like in the case when a lot of psychic information needs to be, let's say, dealt with. It is accompanied by psychic phenomena. But the chakra is idle. You see? So all this talks about, I'm going to my therapist, like crystal, chakra, we're working on my chakras, I don't feel well because this chakra, that chakra. It's a complete taking the spiritual knowledge from somewhere else, and that's what New Age is. It has its pluses and it has its limitations, downright to the fantasies. Fantasies, you see? So yogi conversation on chakra workshop is just like, okay, give me some more pot, man, a chakra workshop, like this is ridiculous. And this is what is being proliferated, and the books are sold, and people I've been in it. I've been in Sedona, in Arizona, and like in Vancouver. It just baffles me. But that's what it is. That's the picture of modern day spirituality. See? When things are taken from here, taken from there, taken from here, taken the Chinese takeaway, sushi, Japanese, which one you want? Californian rolls, Okay, let's finish it all with Coca-Cola. So chakras here, in a sense, Kashmir Shaivism, for example, doesn't even have the same number of chakras as in classical yogic texts. It has 6 instead, including that of the Brahmarandra. You see? And it speaks of this in different language. It uses different language. It does have the root or base chakra, but it all incorporates also the second one in the classical, in yogic texts. So in other words, it omits breaking down the Muladhara and Svadhisthana. It has only one for it. And then it goes straight to the Kandabal, here, into Manipura, straight into the Manipura, and gives a lot of attention to it. That's why we go there at the beginning of meditation, because this is where the biggest conglomerate of psychic pathways, nadis, and 10 most important nadis spring from there. You see? Yes, it does have the heart chakra, yes, and then it does have, and then it moves to instead it omits the throat chakra, goes straight to the ajna, and then Brahmarandra. So 6 altogether instead of classical 7. But these wheels of energy not to be understood as chakras in sense of how we speak about them as psychic centers. So we cannot just superimpose it. I did that for the easier way to remember them. You see? Otherwise, please don't hold me accountable for if you catch the wrong drift. This is not for the sake of, oh, okay, so Vamishvari here, this is just for the ease of remembering it, you see? And their approximate, let's say, positioning, except for, I would say, Vamishvari and Gokari and Bukhari, that you cannot go wrong. See? Because in the case of this, it is clear the base, earth, the heart, and pure awareness.